Okay, it's 7 o'clock. Everyone is here now. I'm going to start the meeting. Alex is going to be a few minutes late. She has conflicting meetings, but we have lots to get through. So I'd like to make a motion to open the May 6th, 2021 New Paltz Town Board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all. I'd like to make a motion to approve the town board agenda as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Announcements, the town hall offices will be closed Monday, May 31st for the holiday. And the other announcement is that this month's conversation with the police is Wednesday, May 19th, 6 to 7:30 p.m. at Hasbrook Park. And that's the only announcement I have. If anyone has anything else.
I don't remember the exact new schedule, but the recycling, new recycling days and hours are in effect as of May 3rd. I believe the recycle center is closed on Monday and Tuesday and is open from Wednesday to Saturday with extended hours on those dates.
Yep, they are doing 4 10-hour days. And so they've been telling people, we'll see how it goes. They've gotten some positive feedback already. Some people like that, they're going to be opening earlier. So I think they open at 7 a.m. or something like that. It's on the website. And so trying to see how this works out. And with that, I would like to open the floor for public input. Public comments. If you'd like to make a comment, raise your hand and or your digital hand. I can't see you all at the same time.
People in the meeting waiting.
Everyone, you guys can keep letting people in. I mean, as we go along. So if you raise your hand and then try to keep it to 3 minutes. And so Tom, if you can, Tom? Yes.
Good evening, everybody. I have 2 topics this evening. First off, I'd like to close the loop on the issue I raised several months ago, namely that 2019 reported crime data for the town of New Paltz was missing on the New York State Department of Criminal Justice Services Crime Statistics webpage. Apparently, there had been a glitch in the submission process that Chief Lucchese explained. It has been fixed, and I have received the data. In reviewing the statistics, which were still pre-COVID, I was happy to find, as we all probably should be, that reported crime in New Paltz had declined again from 2018 by a sizable 12%. This brings the total 10-year reduction in this reported crime. It's the official name that it gets. It's required by the FBI, and it gets reported to the FBI. It's the official measure of the level of crime in any community. It brings the total 10-year reduction down 65%. Put another way, reported crime is now 1/3 of what it was 10 years ago. Meanwhile, the number of police officers in the NPPD has remained effectively unchanged, indicating, as we've argued before, that New Paltz is over-policed and it is time for a reduction in the force and its budget consistent with good sense and calls from Movement for Black Lives and others to reduce the overall presence of police in our communities. Also, the savings should be reinvested, for example, to civilianize responses to mental health crises, or as many as possible. Second topic is, I have a question about the police budgets for 2020 and 21 as presented in 2 documents on the police department webpage. Each document, this is just information about the documents, the way they're structured. Each document has a summary page giving total dollar budgets for personnel services, contractual services, and equipment. My question is about contractual services and an apparent discrepancy between the totals on that summary page and the detailed contractual expenses that are listed on a separate page in each of those documents. For 2020, the summary contractual services was given as over $400,000, while the list of detailed expenses adds up to only $159,000, obviously less than half. Similarly, for 21, the summary page total is $284,000, over $284,000, while the detailed expenses add up to only $137,000, close to $138,000. Again, less than half of the summary total. There's no obvious reason why this should be. There's no footnotes that sort of address the point. So I'm just asking, but it may be an obvious thing that I'm not getting. So I'm just asking whether you can explain the missing detailed contractual expenses in each of those years, 2020 and 21.
I'll take a look at them, and my guess is it's just that some of the details aren't in there. You know, it might be healthcare, retirement, or something like that.
Right, those aren't counted in towards the total personnel anyway. Those are.
So I'll take a look and try to get an answer for you.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Neil. Thank you.
Edgar?
Hi, good evening. Edgar Rodriguez, New Paltz resident. I will read the text of a brief petition to your board on reinventing policing, safety, and well-being, signed by many people. Soon you'll receive some people are signing electronically and some on paper. Copy, you'll receive both. The New Paltz Town Board approves a police reform proposal of April 1st with little public participation on issues of substance during the 10-month process. The report does not reflect the recommendations of Black Lives Matter and the Movement for Black Lives. The report's recommendation will dramatically increase the current police budget of $2.8 million plus fringe benefits in 2019 in our town, which has low crime and is over-policed. The recommendations include additional personnel, higher salaries, increased technology, and training. These expenses will be on top of already approved funding for $10,000 in more bullets, 2 new police cruisers, and a new police station. This is excessive for our town budget, and it will not lead to the elimination of the root causes of community harm. The report dismissed divesting from policing and reinvesting in community services designed to alleviate racial inequities. The reasons offered are not supported by data. Instead, half the recommendations involve training, which can alter awareness and attitude, but has been shown not to change police behaviors. Thus, training in anti-racism and de-escalation have to be part of a larger set of structural transformations in order to truly reduce police violence. While the report claims to promote anti-racism in policing and in the community, it ignores the systemic causes and recommendations don't do enough to create accountability and community well-being. We, the undersigned residents of New Paltz and or people who have been affected by and or concerned about policing in New Paltz, consistent with Black Lives Matter and the Movement for Black Lives, demand that the New Paltz Town Board divest from the runaway police budget by 25% via police attrition in the next budget. Reinvest and prioritize resources in community and safety and well-being. Reinforce police accountability by establishing an independent police commission that goes beyond what is in the adopted plan. It must have meaningful power and be composed of individuals who are self-selected from the communities who are most affected by the police behavior and or who have a demonstrated history of working on police racism. Provide community access to relevant policing data, recognize a process of community shared decision-making to meet these demands, We also need, it's not in the petition, just one sentence. We need to know what is the process of the steering committee going forward post April 1st. We'd like to know whether that committee still exists, will it be involved in the deliberations, and what role will the community play in the shared decision making of all the decisions that you need to make that were reflected in the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie?
Thank you. I'm speaking as a member of the UAC Housing Committee, as well as a resident of the town of New Paltz. First, I'd like to thank Supervisor Batez for meeting with the committee and for the fruitful conversation we had about the need for affordable and low-income housing. When my husband and I first came to New Paltz 53 years ago, we came with a job, expecting a child, but with no money in pocket and a salary in today's dollars of $50,000. We were able to find a 2-bedroom apartment in New Paltz, whose rent was 30% of our salary, and eventually purchased a small house whose mortgage was also 30%. The suggestion portion of income that should be spent on housing, 30%. We have worked, raised our family, and have been a part of this community ever since, a happy part of this community. We need to make the same thing possible today for those in our community in similar circumstance. It is how strong, stable communities are built and maintained. However, the median income in 2018 in New Paltz was $72,500. To be affordable, a 2-bedroom apartment would have to be about $1,560 a month. And to afford even the lowest listed price of a home in 2018, and it's inflated since then, you would have to have a salary of about $154,000 a year. In 2018, 17% of the population in New Paltz was in poverty. And that means for a family of 4, it was under 25,000 or under. And approximately 20% of the population was severely cost burdened, that is paying 50% or greater of their income on housing. And it's gotten much worse in 2021. We are facing a housing crisis even before COVID. And since then, it has only become worse. I urge the town board to adopt a New Paltz Housing Action Plan, as suggested in the Ulster County Housing Action Plan. And when the county adopts the recommended Housing Smart Communities Initiative, we should join the program that ensures housing advocacy groups, as well as the general public, will be involved in discussion around housing every step of the way in creating a much needed New Paltz housing plan. The county plan also recommends that the county set aside $100,000 per year over 5 years, and communities be granted $25,000 to cover the costs of their own housing action plan. Let's be the first community to apply for it. Let's tell the county, let's tell them right now that we are anxious to be part of that initiative. There is no time to waste. We are in a housing crisis. We must act now. Thank you.
Thank you. Tanya?
Hi, I'm going to be reading from another computer, so let me know if my voice doesn't carry. I'm Tanya Marquette. I'm speaking as a member of the New Paltz Community for Safety and Wellness, the coalition that we have here. And I have just 2 brief comments that I want to make tonight. First, I'm very concerned about the community process for undoing racism in policing and community safety. This is a long issue. I've spoken about it many times, and I'm sorry to say I'm being compelled to speak about it again. When will you hold a public dialogue on the detailed response to the steering committee report that was accepted without discussion? How will this happen? When will we see the town laws charter change to mandate an independent civilian review board, and one that is selected by the community of color, including those who have a demonstrable history of working on the issue? Are you planning on making a community review board, permanent part of the town structure? These are some of the core issues that are really burning and that steering committee report did not really deal with at all. But if we are going to be dealing with racism in any way, we have to really start looking at making structural changes, not minimal reforms, which history shows us just do not work. And my second point that I would like to make is I would like to note, in case you're not aware of it, the many towns, cities, and states in the country that are implementing defunding of police programs, employing professional mental health and other trained people to handle crises instead of the police, who are the biggest problem when trying to avoid unwarranted brutality and killings by those alleged law enforcers. Ithaca has been using such professionals instead of police for some time quite successfully, as reported by a longtime police officer in that city. And somebody who, by the way, really likes to see those changes. New York City, after a trial of such a program in 2 communities with great success, has just made it a citywide mandate to hold the police back and to begin using mental health professionals and other social safety net professionals for dealing with problems. Camden, New Jersey also has a very good experience with such community-based safety networks. In many other states across the country, we're seeing the same movement. So when will New Paltz get on the bandwagon? It's clearly falling behind, on safety and on the safety and anti-racism bandwagon. For a town that fancies itself as liberal and humanistic, it's not living up to its reputation. Please respond with meaningful actions that are shared with us, the public. Thank you.
Maggie?
Hi, good evening and thank you. I'm Maggie Vever from New Paltz. As you know, I am here because I have been working with the coalition, and I've also been working with the UACT Police Reform and Reinvention Committee. The plan, the EO20 plan, presented a vision of changing the police focus from law enforcement to public safety. That's a laudable goal. They also want to change the culture of the town and the police department to combat racism. That, of course, is a laudable goal. So I commend the committee and I commend the plan on that part. To do this, the recommendations included a focus on intensive use of training for social discrimination awareness and use of body cameras, descriptions of the ideal police officer, a specialist police, recruitment interview questions, and a few accountability measures for police. For example, a civilian police commission, and data collection. They added data collection requirements and discipline matrix. They also included a timetable for completion of these recommendations. That sounds great in terms of accountability. However, I asked you to consider another perspective. I asked you to consider the following. Changing the model of policing from a law enforcement model to a public safety model limits the potential for directly and immediately improving the community safety needs of those most affected by policing. The adoption of this model, the public safety model, increases the cost of policing, adopts a value of continued proliferation of over-policing in our community, and seeks to encourage more interaction between police and people of color and other groups affected by over-policing. that is, lower income people of our housing complexes. So adoption of this model accepts providing the police department and police officers more resources, as opposed to redirecting resources to those most affected by policing. This latter model of redirecting resources from policing to the community is what Black leaders and people of color advocating for police reform have been demanding for the longest time. If you consider what the Black Lives Matters has proposed, what Poor People's Campaign has proposed, what the Movement for Black Lives Matters has proposed, and the Zero campaign, you would really need to reconsider the perspective in the plan. We support longstanding African Americans and their leaders who have criticized over-policing and under-policing in areas of high crime. We are not a high crime area, with very few violent crimes, and as such, we're really a safe community. The plan does not include data on the level of policing, the nature of policing activity in our town, nor any discussion of data on the costs of policing. Our committee analysis did so and provided conclusive evidence of over-policing and its corollary budgetary impact. There is no danger of under-policing since crime and personal safety are not issues, but over-policing is. Our committee, and I certainly as part of the two groups that we've talked about, I mentioned, are prioritizing the use of community safety and well-being. Consequently, we recommend redirecting, as we have said before, through attrition, 25% of the police budget to the New Paltz Office of Community Wellness. It's a great move to rename that office. Now you've got to put the money where the mouth is. We accept the need to change the culture of our town and police department to combat racism, and it is really a laudable long-term goal, but we can't support spending the resources needed in the short or the long term. Experiences of communities of color with police reform training efforts demonstrate short and long-term ineffectiveness in changing behavior. The goal is very unlikely to be brought to fruition without a sustained priority, massive infusion of money, and complete public buy-in. Societal conditions, political focus, and demographic factors like mobility, racial and ethnic composition, and economic status will likely overpower the outcome sought by this part of the plan. Training is inefficient and found to not change police behavior, as I said before. And as I have said before, New York City and Great Britain recently documented this in their study and therefore discontinued the use of training and bias awareness and racially attitudinal changes training. Minimally, therefore, those measures must be paired with strong accountability measures so that we really do strongly believe in the need for strong accountability measures, but there was no looking at the contract, and that's a strong indicator of accountability. Consequently,
Wrap it up, please.
We really recommend that the New Paltz Town Board rely on stronger accountability measures and minimally on awareness training and redirecting resources to communities, to community who are affected by the police. You know, you really can't, it's a choice. You can't choose to put more money in police and thinking that you're going to be helping the community when the real need is to help the community directly. With a long-range plan that is not likely to be able to be brought to fruition. More importantly, I was always proud of being from this town because I felt we were progressives, but we can't call ourselves progressives if we make that kind of a choice. So I thank you for giving me a little extra time.
Thank you.
I know that Jen Berry was
yeah,
looking to
Jen,
talk.
go ahead, Jen.
Thanks, everybody. Hopefully I can finally clarify a few of the points that have been raised this evening as I've been taking some notes. I have heard repeatedly that the NPP RRC was dismissive, and I would like to very publicly refute this as erroneous. We were in no means dismissive. We took everyone's input into great account. We did not necessarily come to the precise same conclusions, but that does not mean that we were dismissive. And in fact, we worked extremely hard to provide a very holistic approach. Again, it is a different approach, but it is extremely holistic, and goes in a very particular order to achieve that holistic end. Also, there was mentioned this evening that no one on the committee has a demonstrated history of working with police, but I actually do. I have done this work in the Bronx. I have done this work repeatedly. So that is also erroneous. It was mentioned whether or not the intention was for the commission to be permanent, and I would like to just state for the record that it absolutely is to be permanent. With regard to conversation of defunding, the goal of defunding is always to refund the community. So defunding the police becomes somewhat erroneous. That's not the end goal. That's a means to an end. And we were very mindful of that, which is why, knowing that mental health professionals do not want to go to calls without police, at least in the background. You can shake your head, but the reality is we did the research. They're willing to go, but not without police somewhere in the background. We came up with a creative and, to my understanding, unprecedented solution that we would seek essentially to hire the social workers and the mental health professionals and then give them this training as well, so that you then have 2 for 1. And you have a group of officers, whatever we end up calling them, whose first instinct and first line of training is not to go to the gun, but is to go to all of their other skills first. And so in essence, we are providing precisely what we're being accused of not providing. Also, Camden was brought up this evening, and we did an extensive review of Camden, and all that glitters is not gold, and it appears at much closer investigation as if Camden may be a prime example of fool's gold. I say this as someone from Philadelphia, and I too believed that Camden was a gold standard. I was dismayed and surprised to find out that I was wrong, but I'm perfectly content to say I was wrong in that. Also, yes, we focus largely on training, but we also focus on that very particularly after creating a deep baseline of understanding of where not only our officers are, but where our community as a whole is, because it is our firm belief that we believe we are here on an understanding of racial equity, and we are actually nowhere near that. And we also believe that our goal on racial equity should be much farther than even where we believe we are. But until we have the data to show that, we cannot say that and have it mean anything. And this is the way in which we will get buy-in from those people who maybe see this issue very, very differently and want no parts of rethinking policing at all. This is a way to bring our community together. Lastly, when the Poor People's Campaign was brought up, I had to smile because I have actually worked with Dr. Barber. He and I share an alma mater. We've studied together. So I am well versed in the Poor People's Campaign. Also, before we got on this call, I just went over the report and wanted to just put out there, because it was also brought up, whether or not the members of this committee would still be involved. And while our work is officially done, we do not perceive our work as being done. And so a few of those recommendations and our target dates are coming up. And so if it's helpful to just have us as an accountability body, bring those up occasionally to the board to help ensure that we stay on track and we don't fall behind. I do have the short list of what is upcoming in terms of those target dates. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question of Jen, please?
Sure.
Jen, can you speak for the committee that submitted the report that everyone is willing to be in an advisory and accountability capacity as we move this process forward? Is that what you're saying?
Diana Armistead, Essie Lewis, Albert Cook, and I are perfectly willing to be in an advisory capacity. Yes.
That's great to hear. Thank you very much.
Some people joined us. Anyone else would like to make a comment before we move on to the rest of the meeting? If so, raise your hand. If not, we'll get moving. So, Jen, I'm glad you were able to join us and talk about some of these things. I can say that I don't think that the committee's work is done, and I'm hoping that we can continue to rely on you to help us out and hold our feet to the fire. We all have a lot going on, and so I welcome this, and so thank you for coming. And I think the town board, we are committed to carrying out these reforms. I think the report was great, and we're David and I, and we've been talking this week, and that's why we wanted to put this on the agenda. We're going to have a standing item on the agenda once a month. We're going to be, bringing this up and giving progress updates, and we're going to try to have everything documented. And we're going to talk more about that tonight. And so I just wanted to open this up to the rest of the town board. We have, I take very seriously, and I think for me, one of the highest priorities is the civilian police board. And so we sent around the legislation that created the previous iteration of the board that was disbanded, I think, in 2014 or something like that. And our intention was to, I thought we could start appointing people right away to that. But it turns out, after I talked to the town's attorney, that's been disbanded. That law doesn't exist. We have to recreate that law, and I think that's our intention, right? But I wanted to talk more about it. The town board has that law, and I want to make sure we do it right, and so we want to have these discussions. And so I'm going to open it up to the rest of the town board. I know David might want to say a few things, and I think that the chief is here as well. Dan, Julie, Alex is going to join us at some point. So
great. Thank you, Neil. Yeah, I'm going to speak for a little bit here. Neil and I met with the chief earlier this week about how we can move forward in a meaningful way, in a structured way, in an organized way that allows the public to know what issues we're considering at each meeting, so they can come prepared with their recommendations, and that each of the meetings where we'll be discussing the Police Reform and Reinvention Committee's recommendations, we will be addressing 1 to 2 of the recommendations at each meeting. But let me not jump the gun, and let me just take you through our thinking on how we're going to be moving forward. So if you'll bear with me, at our April 1st town board meeting, the board unanimously received and adopted the comprehensive and final report of the New Paltz Police Reform and Reinvention Committee that we believe to be in compliance with Governor's Executive Order number 203. Again, we thank the R&R committee for their diligent and complete work, and are really excited to hear that they want to remain involved from an accountability and keeping our focus on the top priorities, because we want to move in that order, from top priorities and most urgent things first, and then move down. Obviously, when it comes to the budget is not likely changing until we re-look at the budget for next year, which comes later in this calendar year. Inclusive in the report presented to us were a list of 24 recommendations with suggested priorities and time frames for completion. Tonight, I would like to suggest a path forward for the town board, police commission, and our police chief, and the R&R committee to begin to do the work that has been recommended by the committee. In summary, I want to suggest that the town board, in its current role as police commission, though we may not be the police commission for long. And beginning at tonight's meeting, that we begin to comprehensively review, discuss, and where appropriate, implement recommendations made by the Police Reform and Reinvention Committee. The supervisor and I met with Chief Lucchese earlier this week and discussed a plan whereby the chief and the police commission would discuss in public 1 or 2 specific recommendations at each police commission meeting, starting with the meeting of, I believe that the next town board meeting as police commission. So that would be the 20th, May 20th. We would prioritize discussion and consideration of those recommendations deemed most urgent by the Police Commission, Chief, and Reform and Reinvention Committee. The recommendations to be discussed at an upcoming meeting would be included on the meeting agenda so that members of the public would be prepared to make public comment as wanted. The Chief has said he will be prepared to discuss 2 of those urgent priorities at our Police Commission meeting in 2 weeks. Specifically, first, the recommendation to begin aggregating data based on race, ethnicity, and language. And 2, the recommendation to remove the chokehold from the police's continuum use of force policy. Those would be the 2 items that the chief would be addressing and that we would be in discussion with at the May 20th meeting. And if the town board agrees with this path forward toward the recommendations made to us, I want to suggest that tonight we begin a discussion of what I imagine most of us feel is the first recommendation to consider and one of the top and most timely priorities of the Reform and Reinvention Committee, and that is the reinstatement of a civilian police commission that provides oversight of the New Paltz Police Department. Before beginning that discussion, and thank you for your indulgence in hearing me out, I'd like to invite comments and questions from my fellow town council people.
I just wanted to thank you, David, for organizing those thoughts and creating that path forward. I think that's a very, very wise move. It's one that I certainly support, and I'm happy to hear from my other colleagues, but I am looking forward to discussing a little bit further an independent police commission once all our other colleagues have spoken as well.
I echo your sentiments, Dan. Thank you, David, for framing that, and I'm ready to start for sure.
Yeah, thank you, David. I very well said, and I appreciate your laying this out so people kind of have an idea of where we're going. There's a lot in the report, and so we're trying to break it down, and so making the 2 items each week, 1 or 2 items depending on the size. It also focuses people's attention on those items, and I think it allows us to get the best feedback. So we don't have someone talking about item number 24, and then by the time that item comes around, we're like, what did they say again? Even though we have the notes. So I think this is a good way to address these issues. I'm committed to doing this as quickly as we can. And I think the entire board is in agreement that the police commission is the first and highest priority. I want to make sure we do it right, and that's not an excuse. We did it wrong the last time. I think a good place to start is really the law that was on the books for a long time. The law was linked to in the reinvention report. I thought we would be able to just start appointing people directly to that commission, and then when I talked to the attorney, what's the first step? Actually, I was talking about the appointment of the terms, and he's like, "What are you talking about? That law doesn't exist." I was like, "Well, I found it in the books." He's like, "Yeah, but it was repealed," and so we have to just reinstate it, and that takes a little bit of time. But I don't think that means we cannot start looking for people while we're doing that, right? Because I think that's going to take a little bit of work. And so I want to have a discussion with the board about, how do we move forward, maybe on multiple fronts at the same time to try to, not drag this thing out too long, because I would like to get this police commission up and running, because I think that's going to really help with the rest of these reforms. And I think they'll be, a lot better if we get more input from people that are on the commission. So any other board members want to weigh in?
Yeah, I agree with you, Neil. And I also was a little surprised to learn that we couldn't just simply reinstitute what we had. Given that opportunity, I spoke with Jennifer Berry about a week ago now. I think that when we previously tried to get people to serve these kind of advisory roles, we had a very hard time getting applicants. I do not expect that we will have a hard time getting applicants this time around. I think it'll be quite the opposite. And so Jennifer Berry has agreed to help review some of these applications and then actually provide them to the town board as well with recommendations. So we can go through that as a public process. And a lot of members of the community have discussed specifically how we would select those people. I think that that's a great way to do it, is kind of have someone who has spent a significant amount of time, both in their own career work, but also through the town researching and looking into these issues, kind of bring a fresh set of eyes to that as well. I do just want to say, because I think it's important, that we're bound by laws at both the municipal level and the state level, a number of recommendations for how we should do this, that even other, like a city or another town in a state would do, is not necessarily applicable to New Paltz. Ultimately, the town board does decide who serves on the commission. That's just the reality of it. That's not because we want to do it that way, but that's what it is. So I think within that framework, we can do our best to let the community understand how we're doing it and have a good, transparent process through that.
One thing I thought I'd bring up is this idea of the number of people that would be on the commission, unless I missed something or misunderstood something. When Neil circulated the New York State law regarding police commissions, and it does seems to be maximum 3. Did I miss anything, or is that what everyone else who
that's we need to clarify that with Joe. So the state law says 3. The previous law had 5. A lot of times you're allowed to have like more than the minimum. Like I think we increased the size of CWASP and then we decreased the size of CWASP. So we'll find out those details.
I mean, it seemed pretty clear. I'm happy to obviously explore, but it seemed pretty clear that there was that, and there were the other options of having 1 community member and then 2 town board members, or just the supervisor. But I don't think, it seems to me that we're all talking about, sort of a larger community presence than other options. So I think I'm not too worried about that. So I'm looking forward to finding out about that. So.
Yeah, Julie, I read it the same way. It sounded like it can be a 1-member police commission with 2 town board members, or a 3-person independent. I would prefer 5 if we were able to approve 5, but if that's not allowed within state law, I would like to suggest that we choose a 3-member independent police commission. Really happy that Jen and maybe some members of the R&R committee might join us in helping to identify the best members that represent our community, all parts of our community, in forming this police commission. I do like the committee's recommendation that they receive initial training and onboarding, and attend department trainings, participate in ride-alongs at least each shift per term, and that we really prioritize appointing a diverse commission of members that fairly represent our entire community.
Yeah. So I would, I agree with you, David. I think, what board members should do, and maybe the commission, maybe you already read it, or if people have comments about this, I encourage you to go to the E-Code 360. There's a link to it was chapter 34, Police Commission Board of, and kind of review some of the things that the former police commission was responsible for. So, they adopt the rules, orders, regulations for government, discipline, administration, and disposition of the department and the members thereof. They have access to all records of the department during normal business hours. They do the interviews for the chief, and they forward the chief recommendations to the town board. See, this is, one of the examples that Dan was talking about. The town board ultimately has to be the one to vote on hiring the chief. We can't abdicate that responsibility, but the law, we can have the law set up so that they recommend that person they do the interviews and recommend them to the town board. So it has that they're involved in collective bargaining agreements, including but not limited to, participating in grievances. They receive all copies of any complaints against the department by the chief. So, they do a lot. The previous law, I think there's a lot of good stuff there that I think we don't want to let go of. And, the closer we are to this old law, I think that's good. I'm not supposed to talk, if we rush and we make mistakes, it's less likely that the law withstands the test of time. And I think if we do a good job, doesn't mean it's going to take that much longer, but I think it takes a lot more participation on our part and input from the commission. So if anyone else has any other thoughts on, I can explain more things, but it's more efficient if people go and read the law themselves. So.
I noticed also in the New York State, code for police commissions that there was a mention of the commissioners having all the powers of town board. David nodding his head. That was
not all the.
Pardon?
Not all the powers of the town board, but basically that the police commission, as we have been acting as police commission, they would have the independent police commission would have all the powers that we have had, except what Neil mentioned, which was ultimately they're going to recommend a hiring, a termination, and disciplinary actions that we have to take those actions
that's
on
what I was
behalf of
wondering.
their recommendations.
Julie, I think what it is, Julie, is I think it's a little misleading. So it starts out that, the town board is the police commission, right? And it says like what the role of the police commission is.
Right.
And then it says the town board can appoint people. And then that this board then has all of the powers that the town board is given under that statute. So anything that in like that chapter that the town board has the power to do, like, discipline or something like that, that is then given to this appointed board. It's not like they don't get to
right. No, I
do
got
other
that
things.
too. I totally got that too. My question is about hiring and firing. That was always one of the things that even, we can't, even us as police commissioners, town board, needed to hire and fire as town board members,
It goes into that further on, like, they can recommend the firing or the discipline, but the town board can elect to not follow up on that because of financial implications. The law goes into that a little bit.
And I do actually think that this is an important point, which is what I was hitting at earlier about there are certain laws that we have certain powers. And one of the rationales used for disbanding the police commission the first go round, to be honest, was this. And I'm not saying that was right. I think it's important to have additional people here, but ultimately what a lot of the financial and the hiring and firing responsibilities, the buck does stop with the town board, and we are elected to do that job. And that is one of the privileges of being an elected member of the town. So I just want to be clear on that too, that's not a New Paltz rule, that's a New York State rule.
And part of that is that, the way it was explained to me is that we are ultimately accountable to the voters.
Yes.
Because they're the ones that vote to put us in place or to not reelect us. This board is to some extent not accountable to the voters because we appoint them for a certain period of time. and then they can be reappointed. And so they're kind of one step removed. It's very similar to, we get complaints all the time, like, well, how come the planning board's allowed to do that? It's like, well, because they were appointed, and you may not like what the planning board does or doesn't approve, but they're not, you can't unelect them. You can't even unappoint them, right? And so some things have to be done by the town board because the town board is ultimately accountable to the voters, and that's just the way the laws are written. There aren't things that I want to retain the power to do that, I'm happy to give as much power to this committee as possible. It depends on what we're allowed to do. And so things that we're not giving over, it's because we're not allowed to.
Yeah, I think a good example is the budget. Everyone knows the police have a substantial budget, the largest department in our municipality from a budget standpoint. The final approval of that budget and all budgets of all parts of our municipality, the town board has to approve. No department head gets to make their own budget and approve their own budget. But ideally, the way this would work is the Independent Police Commission and the chief would hear budget priorities from the town board. They would present a budget that they agree on to the town board, and we would be approving that budget. I see our role as not going against the police commission as much as, I see it kind of like only when there is a tie to break, when there's not consensus among the chief and the Independent Police Commission, where we would have to come in and make a decision like that. And that would kind of be an unfortunate situation. Hopefully the police chief and the police commission come to one mind about different things. And maybe Chief, you have a comment about this as well, and how you see it working. I know you were part of the department when the Independent Police Commission was operating.
Well, before the chief chimes in, I would say that, I think a pretty good analogy is, the highway department and the clerk's office. They are independently elected officials.
Yep.
They have a lot of control, but we are ultimately the ones who vote on their budgets, right? And they often, have to, put up with, bigger town issues like, well, we have COVID, we need to have a spending freeze, and the town board cannot give up that responsibility. We try not to micromanage them. We probably do more than I think anyone would like. But I think it's very similar. And that's, I think, a pretty good example. Like, yeah, we're not going to try to micromanage the police commission's budget, but ultimately the town board is responsible, and they're the ones that decide what that budget is. And that's the way it is with, that's state law, so town law. But. And I don't know if Chief is here, if he wants to maybe answer.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think you summarized it. You both summarized the process and the role that the commission played back in 2013. They worked with the chief of police to craft a budget, and then that budget was presented to the town board for approval. And I'm not sure, I wasn't actively involved then, but there may have been instances where the commission and the chief said, "Hey, this is our report," and the town board said, "You need to cut more money." So it's the town board is the final decider in that.
But I do think it is fair to say that and my council, my colleagues on the town board can say if they disagree. I think we're all in favor of this. We're not creating a review board. We are creating the police commission, an independent police commission, not someone who's going to tell us what they think of what we're doing, but who are actually making the decisions and recommending decisions to the town board that the town board must by law act on.
Right. If anything else people want to discuss, if not, we'll be talking about this again in 2 weeks at our police commission meeting.
And Neil, what's the next process for putting the Independent Police Commission, moving that process forward? Is getting more clarity from Joe, putting together a draft law? What do you see as the next piece?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Put the draft law together, run it by Joe, see what he thinks. I think maybe make sure we run it by our the labor attorneys if it involves anything with collective bargaining or something like that. Go through the collective bargaining agreement, make sure it doesn't conflict with anything. If it does, then it involves a lot more work because then we have to bargain with the next contract. So if we want to get this done sooner rather than later, those are the type of things we have to make sure that we address. But I think, like I said earlier, I think we can do some things in parallel. We can start getting applicants. If Jen's willing to help us with that, I think that would, let's do both things at the same time.
Great. Neil, I'll send you, I've taken some notes on our discussions tonight. I have a proposal that may be helpful for Joe to look at in starting to draft the law that incorporates the Reform and Reimagination Committee's recommendation and state law and Joe's initial comments. So I'll send that over to you.
Thanks.
Neil, are we ready to tell people how to apply?
I think they could just send it into the supervisor's office, assistant at the town of New Paltz, or we still have the email address for the committee, right?
I think we should do it as the regular channel for any application though, just so we make sure everything's
okay.
full.
So yeah, send it to assistant@townofnewpaltz.org and Kathy will forward them along to Jen.
Would it be appropriate to have a resume and cover letter, or a letter of interest? What?
Yeah, I think that we could probably just use the same thing that we sent out before, right? But I would imagine if you're applying for any of our committees, right, people usually send a letter of interest and they give us a brief background of why. If you want to be chosen, you got to sell yourself, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense. So like why you want to be on the committee and why you think what you bring to the table for that, whether it's life experiences or just a passion, right?
If I may, I would very much like to see a resume. I'm not particular in any way, shape, or form about the form of that resume, right? But something that says what you've done that recommends you for this work, right? So yeah, I think that would be essential.
Yeah, whatever. I thank you. Whatever you think would be helpful. Maybe you could write something up and we could post that on the website on the Reform and Reinvention Commission page, explaining how people should do it and what we're looking for, and send that to Kathy if you think that would be helpful.
Sure.
Thanks. All right.
So it sounds like we're moving on, Neil. I just want to remind public, if you're joining late, at the Police Commission meeting in 2 weeks, we will be discussing 2 of the recommendations: the recommendation to begin aggregating data based on race, ethnicity, and language, and the recommendation to remove the chokehold policy from its continuum use of force policy. The chief's going to present on that. The public can make comment on that. The board will be discussing that. And once the police commission is seated, the police commission will then take the primary role in starting to move some of this stuff forward. So we're anxious to seat that commission, as soon as we can get that law in and as soon as we can interview candidates. Fair to say?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Thanks, David.
All right. So I'd like to make a motion. We'll move on. I'd like to make a motion to approve and authorize items 2A through 2H on the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And so Ingrid,
Aye.
I'll make you a co-host. We're moving on to the critical environmental area presentation.
Thanks, Neil. Good evening, everyone. Should I go ahead and, oh, looks like I cannot share my screen yet. There we go. All right. Oh, no, I can't see. Okay. Is that working?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone. My name is Ingrid Heckel. I'm a member of the New Paltz Environmental Conservation Board, and I'm here back again on behalf of our board to recommend that you move forward with setting a public hearing for the establishment of two critical environmental areas, the Shawangum Ridge and the Plutarch Woods and Wetlands. And I'd like to recap the significance of these two areas tonight and why we think they justify the CEA designation. But first, just a quick review of where we've come from. We started working on this proposal around 3 years ago, actually. It's been a long project, and presented it for the first time to you about 2 years ago in early 2019. And after soliciting input from your board, planning board, and the public, we held some public information and outreach sessions. We came back with this proposal for 6 critical environmental areas that fall, and you opened a public hearing on it in early February of 2020. And that hearing was held open over the course of 3 meetings. We received comments from 18 people, 15 of them in favor. And then, of course, we went into the lockdown related due to COVID-19. So we came back before you in December of last year, along with my guest, Michael Dupre from the Hyde Park Planning Board, to again, encourage you to revisit this proposal. And there was a lengthy and positive discussion at that meeting. After that discussion, the ENCB scaled back our recommendations to these 4 areas. And, on recognizing there was concern about the extent and size of the proposal. We also followed up on your request to return to the planning board and discuss this further and try to address their concerns. And despite our best efforts, concerns persist on the planning board about designating critical environmental areas. And so in part in response to the planning board's concerns and the desire to move something forward and kind of test something out and hopefully gain support for designating some of the other areas that we proposed, which we still think merit the critical environmental area designation. We're back tonight recommending that you designate the Shawangum Ridge and the Plutarch Woods and Wetlands. We think that there's broad consensus, even perhaps on the planning board, about designating the Shawangum Ridge. I think it's very widely recognized as a significant feature in New Paltz and beyond. But it is also largely protected, and the hatched area in this map shows protected land on the Mohonk Preserve and some other parcels. In contrast, the Plutarch Woods and Wetlands, which happens to share many of the same types of designations and recognition at a state level and beyond for importance, is not widely known or understood by the public or by the planning board perhaps as important, and it's completely unprotected. And so we think that area is more likely to see development in the near term in addition, and therefore we think it's also a good candidate for this designation and as a starting point for critical environmental areas in New Paltz. So let me just again briefly recap some of these, the significance of these areas. The Shawangum Ridge is a very high priority for conservation in the New York State Open Space Plan, in our town Open Space Plan. In fact, it's considered one of the highest priorities for biodiversity conservation in the Northeastern United States. And that's because it supports many unique ecosystems and habitat for rare species. It's a very unique geological feature. In New Paltz, the forests on the ridge are quite extensive. They're part of important network of forests linking, for areas further south of the ridge, over to the Catskills, and beyond. So it's part of an important area for forest connectivity and habitat for forest nesting songbirds like the cerulean warbler. I'm realizing my animation here, which I was missing, sorry. Of course, it's also very important for drinking water protection. It protects our mountain rest reservoirs, part of our public drinking water supply. It's an area that's been recognized as having high value for climate resilience for natural systems, owing to the intact habitat and connectedness and the diversity. And of course, it's a defining scenic landmark of New Paltz. It's a recognized National Historic Landmark, at least the properties of the Mohonk Preserve and the Mountain House. And it's a major recreation resource and part of our tourism economy. Less well known is, of course, the Plutarch Woods and Wetlands. Like the Shawangunk Ridge, it's recognized as a significant biodiversity area by the DEC. It supports extensive forest habitat and abundant wetlands that provide habitat for the state endangered northern cricket frog shown on the left. There are also many vernal pools present that provide habitat for rare species like the marbled salamander. And it's similarly also recognized as having very high climate resilience value. And as the other major forest block in our town, in addition to the ridge, we think in the context of our climate adaptation and resilience efforts at the town level that we should be bringing special attention to the importance of conservation of large forest areas and avoiding fragmentation. So just a recap about SEQR, State Environmental Quality Review, which is how this would apply to new development. SEQR review only applies really to large projects, type 1 projects, which include things that might disturb at least 10 acres of land or more, or unlisted actions. And those include the most common of which being a subdivision. And so those are subdivisions are the most likely type of project to be affected by this designation, which requires then that the planning board evaluate potential impacts to the qualities of the CEA. Most activities and smaller developments of private landowners are not affected by this designation, and that includes building a single family or 2 or 3 family house, a garage, a shed, or other minor accessory structure, landscaping, farming and farm related activities or construction, et cetera. Those things are not affected by SEQR. So this would primarily relate to the planning board's review of new subdivisions. There have been questions about how this would actually play out and what the planning board would do. This is the ENCB's recommendation. And of course, the ENCB can assist in this process and as an advisory board to the planning board. We really recommend the use of pre-application meetings in these areas to bring up the environmental concerns and the information we know about resources. It's an opportunity for the planning board and the applicant to review the description of these areas and look at our natural resources inventory, which was just completed. And in considering the scope and magnitude of the proposed action, the development, the planning board can then determine whether more information might be needed. And so for a small project, there may be sufficient information there to make a determination. For a large project that's already likely to require some kind of environmental assessment, this can help guide and focus that assessment on the resources that we know are significant in these areas. So this is just a screenshot of the Natural Resources Inventory web map, which was recently completed. It's a phenomenal tool, and it contains many of the different GIS layers that went into our assessment and analysis for these proposed areas. So this is showing large connected forest habitats, and the hatching shows, oopsie, I don't know what just happened. Shows core forest habitat, which is areas we want to try to avoid or reduce or minimize fragmentation in. And of course, these are great candidate areas when there are new subdivisions to utilize conservation analysis and design. And our subdivision regulations have an approach for this. So that basically can include either clustering a subdivision and setting aside an open space area, or in this case of a smaller project like on the right, simply finding ways to reduce the overall development footprint and impact of the project. Our open space plan also contains guidance on how to do this and the sorts of principles to apply, and it specifically recommends applying this approach in these areas. So some other statistics to run through. These two areas combined measure a little over 5,600 acres. They're almost entirely in the A3, Ag 3 zoning district. They have no commercial zoning. And when you take out the Mohonk Preserve lands and protected area, the acreage is it comes to less than 16% of the town area. And also just to recap, this designation doesn't protect land or prevent development. It doesn't create a new regulation or jurisdiction. It simply requires that information, which is already present in our town land use plans, be explicitly referred to during the environmental review process and considered. So I'd like to finish off with just a few quotes from our public hearing last winter, beginning from Nava Tabak, Scenic Hudson Director of Science, Climate, and Stewardship. Quote, "The biggest threat to these unique natural areas is fragmentation by a gradual and piecemeal encroachment of development. The size and relatively intact nature of these areas is what makes them exemplary and critical to protect. Federal and state regulations do not on their own adequately protect regional resources such as these. It's up to municipalities to ensure their long-term persistence." And next from Augusta Yearwood, a former planning board member, quote, "We've spent thousands of dollars to study and identify where we want to grow and where we want to preserve space in our town, but these are often not cross-referenced when doing actual planning work. A CEA can help remedy that. Additionally, knowledge that their parcel is in a CEA will help applicants plan their project and review process appropriately, rather than being taken aback when additional review, which was always needed, is requested. It will also help applicants plan from the start. There's no reason to vote against this." And lastly, from resident Daniel Schniedewind and Tom O'Dowd, "Since the earliest zoning standards were put in place in New Paltz, there has been hand-wringing about what stood to be lost by property owners and developers. And yet, in retrospect, none of these alarmist warnings have been borne out. To the contrary, with each new conservation measure, New Paltz has become a more coveted place to live. Its uniqueness and landscape receive more celebration, and community appetite grows for the preservation of its forests, streams, and wetlands. As speakers at the public hearing have so far demonstrated, there is overwhelming support for this initiative." So once again, we urge you to set a new public hearing, perhaps for May 20th, to receive input on these two proposed areas. And if you decide to move forward with the designation, the next steps would include completing seeker, and I have completed part 1 of the EAFs for these two areas for you, which you could work with your attorney to complete. And after the town board, if the town board decides to pass or adopt these areas by resolution, that filing would be sent to the DEC and it would take an effect within 30 days after that. So that's a brief overview of the process. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and thanks for your time.
Thanks, Ingrid. Anyone want to have any comments from board members? Discussion? I appreciate the ENCB paring it down. I think it's never hard to, you're choosing your favorite child, right? So how do you choose the CEAs you want to focus on? And I think that you did a really good job, and I think you explained it really well, that the Plutarch Woods and Wetlands do have a high priority. We all tend to think of the ridge, and I can see how we asked you to go back and pick one, and I respect the fact that you came back and said no, one's not good enough. It's got to be two, because this one's really important. So thanks for doing that.
I feel comfortable moving forward with a public hearing on the two locations.
I'll certainly add that I do feel comfortable moving forward with the public hearing on the 20th. I think the work is excellent. Ingrid's presentation was very compelling, and I just really appreciate it. And I know, she brought up that previous public hearing where there was just overwhelming support and so many compelling arguments. So I appreciate it.
I agree with Dan and Julie. Ingrid, I'd like to agree to move forward on the public hearing for those two environmental areas that you showed us.
Thank you, Ingrid. Great presentation, and thank you for your transparency around the process and reviewing the process. As the liaison to the planning board, I'm going to share some comments or a summary of comments from my perspective on where the planning board came out on this. They were seemed to be okay with doing just the ridge, the Shawangum Ridge. They didn't want to do more than that. They don't get to decide that, but that was their comment. I think every planning board member but one wanted to wait and hold and just do the ridge. The other comment, which I think if there is the will to move forward on both areas, one thing that I would ask is that all affected property owners are alerted to the public hearing about that a law may be passed that does have an effect on how their development rights and specifically subdivision rights may be impacted, and so that they can hear and understand that your property is now in a designated critical environmental area, and you get to ask questions and understand what's happening so that the public is fully aware and on board.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to say now that I do think that this isn't going to be this is my preference, right? That it's not a one and done public hearing. This is not something we set for May 20th and then close the hearing that night. I do think that, and I'm not trying to slow the process down at all, I think that the public hearing needs to go on for a few meetings to make sure that anyone who does want to make a comment or has a question, they have the ability to do that. And I don't know and I'm not saying that to slow things down. I'm saying that to kind of help or back up what David is saying, that I think we need to do a good job of getting the word out. Hopefully there'll be maybe an article written about this with some maps, and we can put stuff on social media. That's just my thought on this.
Neil, I had a question. We're lucky enough to be able to see all these presentations that Ingrid and the group put together. They're very well put together. They're very professional. They're very explanatory. A lot of people don't really know the details, and when they hear about it, all they hear is the title. Is there any way for those presentations to be made public so that people can look at them and understand it a little bit better, if they choose to do that?
I mean, they should be this is recorded, so this would be on YouTube. We could maybe, if Ingrid or if they're okay with it, we could put the presentations on the think there's a portion of the website that has the CEAs
Yeah.
with the plans and the maps and everything else. We could make sure those are up there, put them in a PDF form so people can kind of go through them even if they don't have PowerPoint. Yeah, and I think, you know, we could maybe we could try to maybe link to these specific meetings with a timestamp of when the presentation is for
I
the
think
ones that,
Yeah, I think that would be a really nice idea if it's possible. I
yeah,
think it
for
would
the
help.
ones
a lot
that
of
we have.
people.
Yeah, I guess all of the meetings are on YouTube. Even it's been so long since we had a meeting. I just forget that before Zoom, we recorded them as well. And so, you know, maybe if Ingrid knows when we can try to track down when these meetings were and at what point in a meeting they are, so people don't have to watch the whole thing and fall asleep and then miss the whole presentation. We could, you know, tell people, you know, at 3 hours and 10 minutes into the meeting, this is when the presentation was. That's a good idea. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that'd be
Yeah.
really helpful.
Yeah, there is a page set up under the ENCB. I was going to share it through chat, but I don't see a chat. So we can post it there. And that has a fact sheet. It has the descriptions of the two areas and the maps. So I'd be happy to post the slides and the link to this meeting.
Thanks.
That's great. So one quick thing about David, your idea that we notify all residents, that would be an expensive, I would assume that would be by mail, you know, so is there, and maybe Ingrid would be a good person to weigh in on this. I'm assuming there would be people for whom this just isn't relevant. They live in one, you know, potential CEA, but there's no way they could be, you know, their land is not such that they could, you know, do something that would be subject to seeker. Am I right that? And could we know, you know, is there a way to?
We did try to identify for the planning board the parcels that had subdivision potential within these areas. So I could go back and create a list of those. I guess, however that notice is crafted, I just would, going back to what David said, clarify that this does not in any way alter their development rights on their property. It simply brings in a piece of information during an environmental review process, and a piece of information that frankly is included in adopted town plans.
Which being the open space plan, for example.
Yes.
So why don't we at least set the public hearing for May 20th, and then, you know, we can start getting people's, you know, the sooner we set the public hearing date, the sooner we can start hearing from people, right? And then I don't think there's going to be a lot of controversy to set the public hearing, but maybe there'll be to close it. How's that? Or like to make a motion to set the public hearing for May 20th at 7 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and that we can keep talking about it. Get the word out and see what people have to say.
Thank you. And I'll follow up with you about that, about sharing that information.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Well, can I just ask, is the board in favor of if it's not cost prohibitive to alert folks by a letter? Are people on board with that, moving forward on that? I guess what I would say is, like, the CEAs, while they, you know, to Ingrid's point is, like, they potentially have an impact on development rights. It's a potential impact. It's not that they themselves cause an impact on your development rights, but they have the potential to have an effect on one's development rights.
So, yeah, David, I'm not.
That's fair. That's fair to say, isn't it, Ingrid?
Yeah, but I mean, that potential exists in any environmental review process.
Yes, this just adds a it's a designation that what you're trying to do is now in a critical environmental area. Or otherwise, why are we doing it? If it basically doesn't do anything different than what's already supposed to happen, we're doing something to bring additional focus and spotlight that what you're trying to do is potentially has an impact on what this town considers a critical environmental area and requires a harder look, for lack of a better term.
I think it makes perfect sense to get a list and see how much it's going to cost us to send these things out. You know, it may not be as much as we think, and I think it might be a really easy decision, right, to try to do it. And if we could get a list of the properties that we think would be affected, I can circulate that around to the town board, and we can start working on, you know, like a postcard or something like that. Or
great.
This might be a really annoying point, but I do just want to bring it up. I mean, I'm all for notifying people about public hearings and using a lot of channels we do use. I'm slightly concerned that if we expend town funds to notify differently for a public hearing like this, if we are setting a standard that's going to bite us later when we have different things to do with people's lands and we don't take this action, and then we get potentially sued later. I'm not an attorney. I just wanted to maybe we should figure that out before we change the process than we have in the past.
It's a good thing to ask.
You make a really good point. I mean, we rely on people getting informed by, you know, by coming to meetings, and when they don't, you know, come or don't know about what's going on, it's, you know, we feel sorry, but it's, you know, there's a lot of really important things that we discuss at these meetings, as everyone here knows. So I agree with you, Dan, that's a little bit something really we should consider.
All right.
Fair point. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
That I'll maybe move on to number 5, and I think Matt Eiler is here. Matt wants to talk. I think he does. I'm making him a co-host. I don't know if he has a presentation or anything, but Matt, so this is, you know, we have some change orders for 59 North Putt, water main service, facade improvements and installation. And I just, you know, Matt, I think Matt got a tour today, and Matt wanted to come and talk to the board, give us an update and answer any questions that the board has on this.
Absolutely. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good to see you.
Hi, Matt.
So yeah, I'll just give you a quick update and explain what I'm doing here. So I did go over to the building today. It is a hive of activity. There are probably 40 people working there. The second floor is mostly built on like 2/3 of the structure is like framed out. The steel's in, the plates are going on, like the decking, the whole inside, all the windows are framed out, all the like the initial sheetrock and insulation is up along the sides. It's looking good. So overall, the team has been working really well together, and everybody's been commenting on this. I mean, we're you know, I think you know, Neil and me and Marty can take some credit, but it's also where we lucked out. We just have good contractors that everybody seems to want this to succeed, and they're working with each other, and they're all, you know, coordinating with each other. I've heard just on another site that shall go nameless, it's not going quite so smoothly. So anyway, that's fantastic. The biggest challenge we're facing right now that I'm sure you're all aware, there's some serious supply chain disruptions as a result of sort of knockoffs that started with COVID, but are kind of working their way through the system now. So I believe that we're still gonna make it on schedule, and if we don't, it'll be close. So I'm not concerned about it. We've already talked to Gene, and we can work things out if we need a little extra time. I also think we're gonna end up moving the police in hopefully by the deadline in August of their lease, and then we'll have the court finished up and moved in a month or two later, which is fine. But overall, very close to on schedule. I think we'll make it, but I don't want to promise it. But we're not going to miss it bad, so that's good. And budget-wise, we're looking really good. We again, we did, Palumbo did a great job, as I said last time I spoke to you, or maybe the time before, getting bids that were lower than we had budgeted. So we had some nice breathing room. And so what we're doing now is, obviously we don't want to spend, if we don't have to, we're not going to spend all the money, because if there's money left over, we can apply it to the debt service, which is good for the budget. So that's great. On the other hand, there are a couple of things that we need to do, and I'll explain those. And there's a couple of things that we think we should do and are cost effective, and I'll go through those too. So the three things I'm coming, so basically the way the budget works is within the contracts, there's like a small amounts of money that are allowances. So if there's some little thing like, oh, we couldn't get this dark door hardware, now we got to use a different hardware and it's $1,000, we can just do that because it's within the contracts that you already approved. There's some wiggle room, but for bigger things, I need to come to you and actually get you to approve what are called change orders. And so all these change orders still fall well within the overall budget. We're gonna have plenty of money left, several $100,000 left. But they fall outside of the contracts that were already approved. And so here's what they are. The first one is a must do, which is we were hoping to use the existing well that was on the property, but unfortunately, it turned out that there was sodium in the water, like some salt in the water, and the cost of setting up some kind of treatment system for that was absurd. And so while what we're gonna end up doing is we're bringing in town water, which has to come from kind of down around the corner past the new fire department, down on Henry W. Du Bois there. So we got to bring the water. The fire department was nice enough to give us an easement so we can cut the corner and not deal with all the pipes and wires and stuff in the intersection. And then we got to bring it up the road to the building. And that's going to end up costing like $167,000 is the bid. It's considered a change order because we're using our same site guy to do it, which is helpful. And that's according to our Palumbo advisors, it's a good price for the work that needs to be done. There's lateral drilling and have to go under some culverts and quite a bit of work to do. But just to put into context, that 167, we're saving money because if we had gone with the well, it would have been cheaper, but there still would have been a lot of equipment with relation to the well in terms of tanks and treatment in the building, even notwithstanding the salting, even if we didn't have the salting. So it's probably like a net 100 grand or so. So that's the first thing we do, and there's really no way around it. And I guess longer term, it's easier to maintain, and it's you know, there's a lot involved in maintaining a water system with a well and stuff. So and you don't ever have to worry about the water. It's municipal water. So that's that. I don't know what else to say. The second thing is if you know the building, it's like sort of a beige colored metal facade. And due to the fact that we're moving doors around and moving windows around, we're going to have to get some new siding for that. That was always the plan. But because some of the new siding is the stock color and is unfaded, and the other stuff that's been on there for 10 years is faded, we don't care about the back two sides of the building. But the front side, that's like where you enter the building, the parking lot, and the other side that faces the street, the short side, the gable end, we want it to look decent. And all along we've said, if we have a little money in the budget, if we could do it in a cost-effective way, let's try to, there's no way getting around the fact that this is a metal warehouse, right? But we want to dress it up a little if we could do it in a cost-effective way. So we looked at about 10 different options, and what we've come up with is we're going to buy new siding for just those two facades. That's going to be kind of a nice green color. And then they already had planned to do the two main entrances, do like a little porticos and a little stonework there, but we're also going to kind of do behind that this stuff called polyash, which is, it looks like wood, but it's more durable than wood. That's going to be a brown color, and we're going to frame that whole area out. And so I can show you what I'm talking about instead of trying to paint a picture with my hands here. Share the screen. We got this. So can you see this? Can you guys see this? Okay. Yeah, so let me. So if this is the parking lot, there's my cursor. This is the parking lot, and Putt Corners is like that way over there. So these are the two sides that I said we wanted to work on. So you can see this is like this portico thing, this other entrance. This is that polyash I was talking about. This is all new siding. This is new siding, and actually it wraps around the back for like 15 or 20 feet just to create continuity. And so all of that, again, it's not the same thing as if it were a, $20 million stone structure, but I think it makes it look a lot nicer. And the cost for that, the incremental cost is like $79,000 to make it, you know, a little bit of a better sense of place, which we all feel is money well spent. So that's that one. And then there's one more thing. How do I stop sharing this thing? Oh, there we go. The other thing that we're doing is, again, since we do have some room in the budget, we see an opportunity to improve the thermal, like the insulation, the energy efficiency of the building. We already are using great insulation on the ceiling and on the walls, but the metal beams that go up, we have good insulation on the lower part, but the upper part of them, we want to do like some spray foam insulation to help with the thermal bridging, because the coldness can come through the metal and through the beam and into the building. So we're trying to make the building a little more environmental that way and a little more insulated, and that's like $27,000 to do that, which Rick Alfondre is like adamant that we do it. So and I think that's good. And just so you aren't surprised, those are really the big ones. There's a couple more little ones that I'm not bringing you to now yet because we're still getting pricing on them and stuff. But we made some minor upgrades to the Sallyport where the police bring in their police cars. Instead of it just being gravel, we made it a concrete slab. And instead of being a chain link fence, we put a little bit nicer fence on it. And then the other thing is the gas main is, you know, you understand the whole building is all electric heated and cooled. It's really efficient. And we're buying green electricity, so that's great. We do, however, need to bring in a new natural gas line that's solely going to be used for the generator. It's required that the police have an emergency generator during a power outage. We want the police to be fully functional and the elevators to be functional and everything else. It's a pretty big generator, so that won't use a lot of propane. But the propane line that's in there it's damaged and it's too small. So I don't think that's going to be a big dollar number. Probably. Maybe 15 grand or something. And then there's a couple other things we're going to do, that like buy some furniture for the court, but nothing too major. And like I said, even after all this is said and done, I think we're going to be several $100,000 under budget. So that's where we're at. I think that's what I had to say, but I'm more than happy to take any questions you might have.
So Matt, I had one question. And again, I didn't, look at the whole budget, but when you're saying like really, so this adds up to like 290, maybe 300,000.
Yep.
And that's a, pretty big amount. That's still under budget?
Yep. Our bids were something like $800,000 under budget. So we have $250,000 that we're holding as a contingency. And then I think there's another about 250 or 300 that's left in the budget. So we're hoping to bring as much of that as possible. My gut sense, because we're really, we're kind of sticking it to the contractors a little bit, because that's the way it works. They wrote the contracts. They're required to provide the supplies. And so far we've been able to fend off requests for adjustment due to these supply chain issues. But like materials and stuff are way more expensive. And so I don't think we're 100% out of the woods yet. I think there's still going to be some more things. But like I said, my thinking and my goal is that when all is said and done, that we'll have something like $300,000 that we can apply to the debt service for next year.
Okay.
So I think, Alex, one of the things that maybe is a little confusing, it's before we got the bids back, when we put the initial designs together and the contracts together, we weren't sure how things were going to come back. And so we pared things down. We made it the barest bone designs that you could possibly come up with.
That's right.
So, it was going to look like, it was going to look like a warehouse that we took over. And it was going to be pretty bare. And so once we got the bids back, like the Sallyport that Matt was talking about, that's to bring people in, but we were going to have gravel, and it was just going to be a chain link fence. Like, well, it'd be better for people with handicap issues to have pavement, right? And so like those are the things we're adding back. These aren't like extravagant extras. It was going to be so we were very worried when we put the bids out, and now we're slowly adding these things back as we realize there's still enough money in the budget. But they were originally planned, but then we cut all of these things out and pared them all back. That's basically why there was a lot of extra money in the budget.
That's right. And we really weren't sure with all the COVID stuff, and also just in general, you don't know, right? So we had sort of a target number that we had a number that we were hoping to get, and we had a number that we were pretty confident we could get. And then what ended up happening was we just sort of lucked out, just like we lucked out on the bond. The bond just happened to catch this dip in the interest rates, and we just nailed it. And of course, we did do the hard work to get the good rating, but we really got lucky from market, you know? And then on this thing with the bids, because it's an indoor job and a lot of it was happening over the winter, and people like, there was a lot of hunger out there from the contractors. They wanted to keep their guys to work, because back then there still wasn't this clarity yet that there's going to be this big construction boom, which is now happening. But even though there's this big construction boom, it's still not really happening yet. It's like a little bit out, because it takes a while to plan things and get it up and running. And it's already affected materials pricing. But anyway, we just because of market forces, I mean, they expected to get like 5 bidders per contract, and we got like 10 or 12 or 14, and we just got really good aggressive bids. And we also were lucky that the people who bid most aggressively were good people. In terms of, I mean, by good people, I just mean qualified, hardworking contractors. So so like Neil was explaining, you know, we had pared it down as best we could, and now we're not just trying to do anything lavish. I mean, I think all these things we're talking about, I mean, the water line's the water line, and that's the majority of the cost here. Outside the water line, it's $100,000 to make the building better insulated and make it look, you know, halfway decent.
Thanks for that. Thanks for the explanation, Matt. I appreciate it.
Sure. Any other questions?
Yeah, Matt, just thanks for your thorough presentation. Really appreciate it. Yeah, my only concern is I've been through a project where the change orders just kept coming, and I really want to make sure in the environment that we're in, that we're conscious of let's benefit from being under budget. And so when you're talking about $250,000 will be ultimately under budget, just like, are we spending our money now? Are they going to get adjustments from us because of supply chain issues that we're going to have to give back? Or you feel pretty confident that they're going to have to stick with their contract? And
I'm feeling
you
pretty
feel
good
pretty
about it, David, because most of the material now is like on site, or the orders have been locked in. So they've been really aggressive about that. I feel good about it, and you know, not to put a point on it, but our buddy Marty Irwin is working side by side with me through this whole thing, and he's not spending money that he doesn't think we should spend. You know?
Great, that's great. Yeah, and I went by the building yesterday because I'm really interested in seeing what's going on there, and that was the one thing that did strike me. I was like, wow, that's a warehouse.
Yep,
that's a warehouse, and it looks like a warehouse. And so I'm glad that it's going to have some features that will make it look like this, you know, a building in New Paltz where we do our municipal business. So thank you for thinking of that.
Yeah, and when we were drawing up the plans, back to the same thing I've hit on twice, and Neil said too, we had $100,000 in the budget for facade improvements, and we took it out because we were nervous. So, you know, I think this is coming in at, you know, 79,000 for all that, including the labor and the materials, I think is pretty good. And I hear what you're saying about, you don't want an endless parade of change orders. I really don't. I mean, I don't want to throw out numbers, but there's not a lot left.
Great. Then I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve these change orders that Matt's bringing tonight.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks, Matt.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys. I guess I'll see you in either 2 or 4 weeks when I come back for a few more change orders. But I do appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, I'll take off.
All right. So this next item, I sent the email around. This is item 6, the discussion about these parcels that are up for auction by Ulster County. And so Julie said she wanted to have a discussion about this, just for some background. These are parcels that, when people don't pay their taxes, the county makes us whole on the tax bills. And then so if people don't pay their taxes after 3 years, the county then sells, the properties at auction, and we get a list of those parcels every year. So last year, we're interested in, open space, and I sent some of these parcels to the CWAS committee last year. What's up? And they, so we sent them again this year. Wendy, come on, please. I'm talking. And so I presented these parcels to the Community Preservation Advisory Board, and they were interested in them. And so we called the county, and the county will give us to them for what they're asking. They don't go to auction. We can pull them off. So these would be 4 parcels for about $3,550. I think it's about 55 acres. It's about $65 an acre. On one level, these are not the reason that they've been up for auction, and the reason that people don't pay the taxes is they realize they can't really build anything on these parcels. They're mostly wet. It doesn't mean that they're fully protected. There are a lot of activities that are exempt from the wetlands law. Like you could have farming is one of them, aquaculture, and I know that at least one of these parcels, Ingrid said that people have talked to the DEC about doing aquaculture work on them. The reason that the committee, they were talking about this as a potential way to do it is the town would then own these parcels. That would kind of be the seed that then nearby landowners could be approached and asked if they wanted to kind of add with easements to increase the protected area. And so it's a way of getting things started. People want to be part of something bigger, and this kind of plants that seed where it's a bigger protected area. So I just wanted to run it by the town board, see what you guys thought. The reason that we're talking as a board about this instead of the preservation committee is because of the tight timeline. The auction is June 14th. We would need to pull them off the auction before then. It takes the preservation committee a lot longer to do that because they have to have, public meetings and stuff like that. They can I talked to Joe Moriello, they can reimburse us for this money if we spend it, the $3,550, and then it is part of the preservation fund and properties, and then ongoing monitoring and things like that can be paid for with the preservation fund. And so it wouldn't be an ongoing cost to the town.
Would we put easement? Is that okay if I ask something? Sorry.
Sure.
Would we put easements on them?
I mean, that's up to the committee. I don't see why not, unless it costs us a lot of money to put easements on it. But I don't think it would if the committee's doing it, because that's what they know how to do.
And they would be the funds would come from the CPP funds. It would seem the funds to put an easement on. Sorry.
Sorry, I was.
That's okay. Wrestling. So the funds if they were to put an easement on would come from the CPP funds, right?
I think so. Yeah, that'd be my understanding.
Okay. And then, because you mentioned monitoring, and if it would only be monitoring if there's an easement, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a neat idea. I hadn't heard that idea that potentially adjacent landowners would be interested, be asked if
I think that's the incentive, is to say, it's a way of showing that something has been started, and do you want to keep the ball rolling and build on it? And I think the committee kind of liked that idea as a way to show people that they could be part of something bigger, and add to something. And they kind of like that idea. It came up while we were talking during the meeting, and I think that helped to win some people over.
Well,
As
it's
an
kind of
interesting
neat that,
approach.
yeah, it's kind of neat that it's very close to that potential CEA that's on, the Plutarch wetlands.
Right. So Neil, just so I get it, I understand, these areas we would purchase just so that they remain untouched.
Yeah, I mean, we could, like Julie said, we then decide what we want to do with them. We could, the town has other areas, wetland areas that, what one of the committee members said, well, would we allow hunting on this land? That's a pretty good activity, for people to do. Untouched, no one ever discussed any plans. Like no one's saying like, oh, well, let's buy them and turn them into like, a preserve or something. I don't think there's any intention to do that. I think the idea is to preserve them as, wetlands.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm just wondering, would an area like this potentially be able to be used by a nonprofit or a group to do community agriculture for kids? I don't know. Could it be used as agriculture for an educational purpose or for, something that benefits the community? Or no?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, I think it depends on, what's there, access, but yeah, I mean, I think we as a town, once we own it, we get to decide what it's used for. That's the beauty of owning land, especially at, $65 an acre.
And do we pay taxes on that?
No, we don't. The taxes, I calculated, we would lose about, I think, $300 a year in taxes by owning this land. They're not taxed very highly because they're all wetlands.
That was a question I had. That's great to hear. That's really small.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like when I talk to Stacy, what often happens with these type of properties is that people see them on auction and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I could buy all this land for almost nothing. And then they buy it and then they come and they're like, oh, it's wet. And then we spend a lot of time and town resources explaining to them why they can't build anything. And then they want like a consultation meeting with the planning board. And then, they want a wetlands inspection because it's allowed under the town wetlands law. And then, eventually after a lot of effort on the town, they realize like, oh, I can't do anything. And then they don't pay their taxes on them ever. And then they go back onto auction. And it's like that they just cycle through that over and over again. A lot of these parcels are like that. One of them isn't even, it's a landlocked parcel in the middle of nowhere. And so in some ways, yes, we're spending money, but we're also avoiding future problems by, keeping people from buying them and then, petitioning to do all these things that they thought they would do when they saw them for sale. That's kind of how I look at it too. It's like, well, we're okay. We don't have to worry about that one anymore.
So Neil, a clarification. Normally in these kind of tax auctions, the bidding starts at a certain price, and then other people can bid on them. What you're saying is that these would not even come up for auction. We get to buy them at the starting price, and
yeah, correct.
And they come off. So that's a real benefit, that we know the cost and that it doesn't get bid up by someone else. That's big. And I just wonder also, could we approach a contiguous landowner and say, you can buy this property, which is undevelopable, just so you know, and add this on to your property directly, and you can buy it back from the town? Is that a possibility as well?
I don't think so. The county, like when we have to say what we're using it for the public good. So they don't want us being like getting the land cheap and then making money on it.
Okay.
So like the idea is that if we think that there's a public benefit to this property, we get it for cost.
Gotcha.
And, for us, the public benefit is that, we're avoiding future problems with, potential litigation for people saying, well, I bought this and now why can't I build anything here? And we're also, I think, trying to start this bigger process of of easements and stuff like that.
Well, I would be in favor of this as long as the committee, the Community Preservation Committee was interested in this, and their intention would be to reimburse us for it, because I don't think we want to be in the business as a town of like treasurying properties like this. I think if they are of public good, then we created a fund for this. And if they are interested in that, that's where I would be interested in helping them, helping make it possible from a logistical standpoint.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think I would agree the same thing. It's kind of like, purchasing something when it's on sale, and thinking that you need it. Our budget's really tight and we're being really careful with it right now. And I feel like we're very responsible as a town board for that budget coming out of a pandemic. So I do agree it's a great deal. But again, I kind of go back to the analogy that, you don't want to just get something because it's a good deal. But I like the idea that if we know the Preservation Committee will have the interest in reimbursing us, and it also allows us to have that, pieces of land preserved, then I'm for it.
Great. So I will, I will reach out to the committee and to see if they have consensus that as a committee, they're interested in our sending a letter to the county asking for this land. And if a majority of them are in favor of it, we will do it before the deadline. Is that
Neil? Should we just assign you the authority to do that, so you don't have to wait for another meeting if you find that is the case?
That's what I was
Great.
proposing. I'll reach out to them, and once they, a majority of their board is in favor of this, I will send a letter. If people are okay with that.
I'll make the motion that Neil just made, that we assign him the authority to act on behalf of the town board in this case.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. So number 7 is, I was contacted by the Middle School Climate Club. They want to plant some saplings. I got quite a few of them. And and also there was another one that wasn't included in here. Another person contacted me about, maybe last year we talked about the hill slope between Veterans Drive and Stewart's. We were going to replant that with pollinator friendly plants. It ended up being too expensive to kind of do it the way that we were originally thinking about doing it, scraping everything down and then replanting everything. Someone else contacted me and they want to just do it bit by bit, like small plants here and there, and slowly do it over time. It's not going to cost the town anything. It's going to, instead of us mowing it, now we're just going to not mow it, but we're going to slowly add like wildflower plants in there. And we save money by not mowing it. Chris, I think, has been talking to this person. Chris is in favor of doing this. We'll save quite a bit of mowing time. And so like my motion is to authorize the supervisor to work with the people, where is it? The Middle School Climate Club, to find a place where they can plant some saplings on town land, maybe up at the Field of Dreams, and to work with this volunteer to kind of move the pollinator garden along 32 forward.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the next one is authorize the so Gene was approached by one of these firms where they audit our franchise fees to make sure that we're getting the full amount. We don't pay any money unless they find instances where we're not paid the full amount, and then I think they take a percentage of that. I've talked to other town supervisors. They think it's a good thing to actually verify that you're getting the right amount from, like, say, Spectrum or something. Not that they would be dishonest or, an unethical company, because everyone loves their cable company. But it never hurts to just check them. And so this, the motion would be to authorize the supervisor to sign contracts with Troy Banks for franchise fee audits. And I'm happy to have a discussion about it.
I'll second.
Anyone have any thoughts about it?
This is Gene's all for this?
Seems like a no-brainer.
Yep, let's do it.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I guess the next one is, do you guys want to go into executive session to discuss personnel? We've all had a chance to review the applications, and Chris has made some recommendations. I don't know does anyone want to go into executive session? No.
Oh.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to hire Tyler O'Brien and Matthew Hoffman as part-time seasonal buildings and grounds workers at the rate of $20.34 per hour. Is that
Second.
right, Chris? Did I make sure I didn't mess anything up? I don't think I did.
Yes, that's right.
Great, okay. All in favor?
Second, Alex?
Second, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank
And,
you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Bye.
9 o'clock, 9:01. We missed it by a minute.
Bye,
Good
guys.
job, everyone. Thank you very
Take
much.
care. Have a nice evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.